Thanks, Alan. And look, I have to say, this is TAD Summit number 6. And I said last year that the best 5 tech conferences I'd ever been to were the past 5 TADHack summits. So now that's 6. So congratulations, Alan, and thank you again. All right, so look, in my defense, you'll probably, those of you who don't know me, does anyone not know me? You'll probably guess by the accent that I'm not from this hemisphere. That's my way of saying that if this panel all goes pear-shaped, it's just jet lag, okay? I guess I just want to frame what I'd like to do this afternoon in the final session by Alan had the quote, ended with "Together we make change." What I'd like the panel, and in fact the audience, to do this afternoon is kind of just take your company hats on, you're off this afternoon, and pretend you're just part of the TAD Summit community. Because I think that's really what I was kind of getting to with this session. Alan and I work at opposite ends of the earth and opposite ends of the time zone, so often there's a late night sort of diatribe from Alan hitting my inbox, and he wakes up sometimes to something that I've scribbled through in the day and argued about something. And we did this a couple of times back and forth, looking at the idea of, doing the State of the Union. I had to do a State of the Union talk around Unix and Linux technologies back in a previous life. And what I really wanted to do is, first of all, heaps of good things have happened through the 6 years of TAD Summit and 5 years of TADHack. The quote was, "Together we make change." And I guess I just want to sort of sound out people's ideas on how we actually make that change. And I just want to go by some of the numbers. In Bangkok in 2013, we had a room about this size and we had about this many people. It was an awesome event. It was collaborative. Keynote speakers didn't just come and go. They sat in the crowd. They listened to every conversation. They were out having dinners with us. They were having beers with us, and we learned a whole lot. And you got to just kick around ideas, and I think that's been part of the, I guess what I've seen as the real benefit of the community. The fact that you can, see someone like James Bodie, who's building freaking cellular networks out of, cow farms in the Chalk Valley, and he's happy to share that sort of information. And the same goes with nearly everyone in the room that I've spoken to. But this is the 6th summit. We've still kind of got a lot of the same faces in the room. We are the choir of programmable telecoms, but it's kind of the same choir. And for the last 4 years, I've had to try and, in a land far, far away down under, tell people why we should run a TADHack. And it's something that I always, it's programmable telecoms, it's telecoms application developers, and people sort of look at me funny and go, but why aren't Telstra involved? And does that mean if Telstra aren't involved, we can't do anything? And I go, no, it's great, have a look at these videos. There's a great, colossus of content that now exists because of TAD events. There's been some amazing, this year, Yusuf is here. Craig Richards from KL isn't here. They had an amazing event. They've done 3 really big events now. We were streaming the Joburg video stream in Brisbane, and people were just marveling at how big it was, but we still couldn't get more than 30 people in Brisbane. And, anyway, I'm going to stop raving, but I just wanted to go, this is a question to the panel and a question to the audience at the same time. To be really clear, this is not the White House press room. I'm not Sarah Huckabee Sanders. If you want to grab the microphone away from me, please do it. But this is the 6th TAD Summit, and most of you, and Lewis, in fact, has been at every single one. Greg's been at most of them. Rob's been at a few. And 5, yeah. It's still kind of the same size. Why do you think that is? Anyone? Why do you think TAD Summit's still the same size it was 6 years ago?
So Greg Sikora, I hope so you know me, OVO. So I drive my from the customer side, let's say white side, to the dark side, on the vendor side. And so I see this more or less the same, but I believe, and this is something what we can do together. And so every one of us can talk to your customer and bring him here. And if I love you guys. For me, this is the most important. Even over the year, I am trying to be here as long as possible and always. and meeting you each time is great pleasure, and going outside drinking beer to 3 a.m. It's also exciting and challenging, but we should also have a chance to meet new customers, and this is actually something what we can help. And I said myself that next year definitely I have to bring at least 3 customers. This is my challenge, personal challenge. So you can do the same.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, this is I think this is my first TAD Summit, so I'm the new face. So as someone who's coming from outside, here's the thing that you notice the minute you walk into the room. There's no women in this room. I think there's 3.
We are a very non-diverse group.
Right, so here's a clue to broaden the amount of people who get to come here. Yeah, no, listen, I was running with the ConverCon conference on conversational interfaces. We worked crazy hard to get representation, 50-50 on stage, 50-50 in the audience. It was a policy, and we were just not having any panel without a woman on it. So here's your call. Don't have a panel without a woman on it. Have active measures to get more women into the community. Broaden the scope. If you're too tight, broaden the scope of what you talk about, and just don't put up with it. So that's my challenge to you now, okay?
I think that's a great comment.
I didn't initially have an answer to this question, but having thought about it and thought about why I and my organisation got involved, I turned up at a TADHack in 2014 because it looked interesting. And it's been a great community to be part of. But I think part of it is that it isn't necessarily a category that people or organisations self-identify with. And there is, as you know, the slides that Alan put up, so much turnover and entrance into this market and consolidation going on. I think it's become a kind of a personal thing rather than an organisationally supported thing, where organisations say, yeah, I'm a programmable telecoms organisation, I'll get involved in the TAD organisation. So I don't know how we fix that, actually. Maybe it's just around making it clear that this community exists and trying to get people to self-identify, or get organisations rather self-identify.
Thanks, Rob. Lewis?
Thank you. So, what can I add? So yeah, I did all the TAD summits, and so I maybe can speak about the foundation spirit. I co-founded Happy Days beginning of 2013, and Alan was super helpful. So I met Alan through the social networks, and he was super helpful and friendly and very supportive. That makes a big difference when you're starting something. And when I was about to sponsor our first event, Alan called me over the summer and said, "Oh, I'm organizing something with all the Tropol guys, Telestacks, and so on. Are you in?" And I said, "Yeah." Although it was in Bangkok, we're based in Paris, so it's not really. But it was really great. It was beginning of building it's more not community, more ecosystem. Yeah. Making not only customers but also competitors talk to one another. That was something very, very interesting. We can sit together in the room and go out and have fun. That's good. And when we sat together at the end of the first TAD Summit in Bangkok, I don't know who had the idea. I think it was Tropo. Said, "What is the next thing? The next thing is build a hackathon." And so it was first TADHack in Madrid. And I think maybe I see TADHack has grown incredibly all over the world, and I think we had to find again this spirit of circulating from TADHack back to TAD Summit, because it was the initial idea. Okay, well, we agreed let's do TAD Summit 2014, but also get more implication and show at TAD Summit what was done at TADHack. So all this. Because there are a lot of things happening. I mean, the market is growing, and there are more and more users, more and more developers, and that's something that has to show here. And yeah, so young guys like David Diaz, who was almost a student when there was the first TADHack, or yeah, women, students, young people, startups. That's good.
All right. Any questions on that one from the audience? Comments?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go.
All right. Come on, Dean.
Yeah, I like those ideas. My personal view is I'm not sure, to get a broader audience, particularly equivalent to fintech, that having application developer and TAD is helpful for a broad audience. I would suggest open telecoms or democratized telecoms.
Good point, and neatly, thanks, Dean. And sorry, there was another question? Yep, sorry. Sorry, this is going to be tricky. Maybe we should use that one. In fact, you guys take that.
Thank you. This is my first TAD Summit. I have 25 years in telecom, 15 as an entrepreneur. I have two things. The first one, in order to grow the sector, and when I say grow the sector, I mean we need money to fund the sector. Every time I sit down with a VC, venture capital, the guy is rapidly trying to categorize me or my company in order to see how much money he's going to make. In order to know that, he needs to understand what is the multiplier associated with the EBITDA I am showing in the spreadsheet. So I think it's key to be categorized in some way. Second, what I think usually works when one tries to build a team, a company, or whatever, is set a purpose, a common purpose, goals, etc. And the best way is putting together a project. Something simple, doable, with a beginning and with an end. So let's say we agree something to do. We go back to our countries. I live in South America, but I can fly anytime it's needed, whatever. But if we put or set goals, a project, something we all understand, and we show that this ecosystem works and show results, people will be attracted to us, I think.
So just to paraphrase that, the suggestion was we actually have like a flagship project from the TAD community. Anyone think that's a good idea? I see nodding. That's good. So that might be something we think about. We can do anything, James. Hey, so another point that was just raised there, my next question. Let's talk about an industry that exposes APIs, uses those APIs to build better user experiences and customer experiences, and tries to monetize it in some way. We call it programmable telecoms. The finance industry calls it fintech. Now, I know we've been talking about trying to do a TAD summit in Asia. Right now, there's about 4,500 at a fintech summit in Singapore. One of the things, and we touched on it before, TAD, is it the right name? It's my absolute bugbear that I see so much more innovation even just in this room, let alone the broader community, around the things that we're doing to take a fairly staid industry and actually creating better customer outcomes, better user experiences, better all sorts of things that can be monetized than I see with someone who's just trying to basically fix, say, a broken direct debit system in Australia. Yet, back to your point, VCs fall over them because they get fintech. They say, oh, you're a fintech. I want to be in fintech. I've reserved 10% of my fund for fintech. So yes, you're a fintech, tick. How do we get around that? What do we, and I guess is programmable telecoms the right way? Any comments from either the panel or the audience? Adam?
I think some of it's around the valuation that people like the VCs and private equity put on things around conversation and voice particularly, and even messaging, because they see those as already being put out into the freemium or free domain. You look at Skype, you look at FaceTime, all these kind of things. They don't see how you monetize it. Yeah. So I think we've got to put it into kind of context. So if you called it something like relationship technology, because that's, you know, person to person, people value relationships, and particularly business to person relationships. That's what people can see as being having a value. Yeah, because we've got in there, we've got a lot of stuff about contact centers, that's customer relationship management, all the stuff we've been talking about messaging. The actual value is the relationship of that connectivity and conversation. So I think if we can move on from sort of the more technical side of it, how we actually connect sessions together, and put it to the outcome side, which is around that bonding and relationship, which comes down to trust as well, because that's what we're talking about, all about the way that we do identification and value. We add and underpin that relationship. So if we can get the VCs and people to think about how we add value and trust to those relationships rather than the underlying technologies that make them happen.
Thanks, Adam. That's a really good point. I guess one of my own take-homes from this particular event is the conversational technology piece, because, you know, for the first time you kind of start to think about, well, a lot of the times in communications technology we're enabling some communication to take place. I love the conversational technology actually trying to improve, make more efficient, make better that conversation. I mean, that's something that I think, you know, can have demonstrable value. Maybe that's something we should be doing more of, and when I say as a community, focus more on, promote more on, maybe doing some sort of flagship sort of user project in that space. RelTech, relationship technology. Anyone from the panel?
Maybe a comment from my side. So it is a bit response to your first question, because and also relationship. And from my perspective, it would be valuable to add business context to the TAD Summit and add business to the discussion, and maybe create simultaneous session which is purely business oriented, and bring technical and business guys together and have them in the same room. I remember from my old time, I was really excited coming here and listening about cool stuff, working for mobile operator, but it was quite hard to explain to the business partner what we can get from this stuff. What is the business model, what is the value proposition, and how they can earn money, because they are, at the end of the day, business is responsible for generating revenue. We are responsible for delivering technology. And it is cool to have new toys, but at the end of the day, you have to justify that those new toys will bring money, and nobody will allow you to have cool new platform if there is no TCO at least 3 years.
So it's all about the business case. Thanks, Greg. Lewis?
Okay, I think when TAD started, it was about removing telecom complexity and opening it up to the web world. I think this challenge is like more or less solved. What we should focus on more, yeah, it's like you say, RelTech. I would say CX, like customer experience, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. I showed yesterday some things about design. A user can be like end user or an agent, but it's like, okay, so again, this includes everything which is AI, machine learning, I mean, all the like buzzwords on hot topics, but at the end of the day, if we are going to use these things, it's because we want to improve the customer experience, and that's where, yeah, the democratization, industrialization of CPaaS and telecom APIs leads to that. It became mainstream. I mean, any web developer knows today that he can pick like a platform and build like some cool thing, or build a single feature app and build a business around one strong app. I mean, also I was in a large incubator during 1 year, so I saw like tons of projects with bots, with analytics, with I mean, and even okay, there are companies like focusing on Salesforce, pushing data, doing AI and machine learning algorithms to get the best values out of the Salesforce thing, and that's why the use cases today are very oriented to sales improvement, customer experience, because it's there. And I think the last 5 years was like creating the thing, and now it's super mainstream. I mean, everybody, the promise is fulfilled. Everybody, every web developer can be a kind of telco guy without any telco knowledge.
Rob?
Yeah, I mean, just threading together a couple of things that I heard, it sort of came to me. Dean, on his way out, said we should call it democratizing communication or something, and I think Lewis's point that's pretty done, actually. We're pretty there. And if you look at the presentations that we've been through and the focus of the hacks, and looking through, certainly through the presentations over the last couple of days, actually, the telecommunications is a kind of a central thread there. But if you look at the technologies, conversational technologies, AI, blockchain, all of those things, it's really about enhancing communication. It is democratized. What we're doing is adding value and enhancing now, and maybe that's what we need to focus on.
So maybe as a community, we've got to stop thinking about how do we make the technology better, but how do we start to think about the user experience, not just being a visual thing, not being the least number of clicks, but how do we make that user experience? Yep.
Again, as someone who's neither a technologist, a programmer, did work in a telco, and as a startup guy, I'm kind of bemused. I kind of look around me and going, I'm beyond. Like, the most interesting comment, I found it interesting yesterday, was the ability to look at one layer of a platform and go, actually, I can still split that into 2 layers. Right, and I go, she's absolutely 100% right. Like, logically, it was right, and then I don't care. So everything in conversational interfaces that's interesting is driven by AI, and all the trajectories that will drive what happens in that sector are all sitting in the AI world. And so, I remember Martin Geddes saying 10 years ago nearly that the wideband codec was really interesting, and I went, "You're nuts," and not to his face, obviously, but just on the internet, and where no one sees it. And he basically said, "No, it's what happens is you get more presence in your head. There's more of them in your head, and it creates a feeling of intimacy, a feeling of presence." And when you go to the other technologies, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make somebody more present to somebody else so that you can build that trust and intimacy and relationship, like being there. That's what you're trying to deliver. And that's not what's being sold today here. So, while we did have, I'm genuinely saying this because I've been around startups a lot, you had exceptional startup presentations where people went, this is where it didn't work, these are the mistakes I made. That is fantastic gold dust. As they say in Ireland, every success looks the same, right? You only learn from the failures, so they're hugely beneficial to be sitting in front of. But one of the takeaways that I got from it was focus on the user experience, what it looks like, what it feels like, how you get there. That's what's going to make a difference. And so when you're talking to investors, yes, fintech makes money because you can point at it and you go, this is the clip that I'm going to get at the end of this process. It is a reliable, repeatable process. Telecoms and communications are a bit different. I make the call happen at a certain quality, but what happens is a shift within the person where they feel, this is incredible. I feel like I'm with this person. I feel like they're sitting across from me. I'm paying 10 euros an hour for a one-to-one conversation with this, because the feeling is just incredible. So that's my takeaway as an outsider looking at everything here, okay?
Anyone from the audience want to have a comment at this stage? Karel? So I get my step count up. Yep.
Thank you. A couple of things I wanted to add, maybe. One thing that I heard that I felt quite close to my experience as a startupper was the lack of being in the identify vertical, let's call it. It's true that when we talk to VCs, I always felt like I'm looking at all the categories, and as you said, I kind of say, oh, AI, because that's kind of like the only one that can fit, even if I don't do AI, I use AI, which is different. And if I do pronounce the T word, not technology, the other one, the telecom, I'm sure like the guy say, ooh, okay, goodbye. You know, old-fashioned, scary thing. It's complex. It's going to be costly. ROI is not going to be there. I don't even want to hear from you. So I do think there is real branding issue there, and you know, I don't know if conversation tech is the correct one, but it's true. We need to do something. The second thing I wanted to say is that maybe being a little contrarian, as Dina's left, so I can take over. Do we need TAD Summit to be much bigger? It's kind of the question is what the goal of TAD Summit. One thing that I personally really like about TAD Summit, it is that it is small. There is other events that are about telecom or communication or AI or whatever that are much bigger. But the objectives for me is not the same when I go to those events than when I go here. And I think the interaction that we managed to have together is also due to the size. So it might be why it didn't grow like crazy, is because we also like to be able to interact with almost each of the person in the room. Almost, there's, okay. Maybe like 10% of the room, which is still much bigger than in most other events. So, you know, that's also a question. So I think at the end is really the question is, yeah, what's the goal of we want to have with TAD Summit? What's the objectives we have? And indeed, there is a part of that which is going to be branding and kind of marketing. So I think VCs is one thing that maybe we like in the room, and also like mainstream analysts, which are the ones that manage to kind of brand, you know, fintech camps, because a lot of analysts have been talking about the fintech industry. So if you want to be the conversation tech, we need those guys to start, you know, putting reports talking about the conversation tech era.
Yep. So I guess our flagship project number one might be, what do we call this? I know Alan's been throwing around programmable telecoms, which sort of, you know, sounds kind of like what we do. But maybe it's not using the T word. I don't know what the word to use, and I have wrestled with this many a late night over a glass of wine. So I don't expect you all to have an answer now. If anyone does have a really good answer, please put your hand up and grab the microphone off me, please. One of the things that's come up a couple of times is around investment. Well, I know there's been some great success stories and some failure stories around startups and innovations that have maybe started from a TADHack, started by someone in the room, gone through various cycles. There's been some acquisitions. There's been some not so happy endings, but you know, and we learn from those. In fact, you learn both ways. One of the things Carell said in his presentation yesterday was, you know, France is not Silicon Valley, and you just don't drive down Sand Hill Road and, you know, have people throw checks at you. Is anyone actually here from Silicon Valley? Because I'm told that happens, but I've never really believed it. But one of the things on the other side, you know, and I keep on coming back to fintech, because if you can think of bigger, hairier organizations that scare people more in terms of their lack of innovation than telecoms, it's banks, right? And your relationship with your bank is probably the same user experience interface and the same level of often hatred that you have with your telco. Yet, VCs, because they have that in that, fintech, it's a growth sector, they see it as a big number industry, finance or superannuation or credit or debit or whatever particular sector that you're approaching the fintech. Alan, I think, threw out some very conservative numbers as for the size of the programmable telecoms industry. The broader communications industry is trillions. And yet, while, and I keep on going back to the Cloud Communications Alliance event that I went to in New York City last year at Alex Kinch's suggestion, there's a ton of M&A activity, private equity activity in the UCaaS space, primarily North America. The fact that there's analyst firms and you know, investment banker types who just focus on that space kind of, you know, I mean, the fact that you get a bunch of people in a panel like this and all they do is talk about EBITDAs and growth rates and how they did the roll-ups, and, you know, the fact that they chose one platform over another is like a bullet point in one slide on like slide 9. You know, the fact that, you know, we've got bigger boxes than you or more boxes in our flow chart than you is just not relevant to them. Yet on the finance side, wow, I've got this new way to collect 2 cents every time someone makes a superannuation transaction. Oh, let's go crazy, let's give you money. And I just don't know if that's an awareness thing. I don't know if that's a branding thing. I don't know if it's just the, and I apologize to Yusuf and anyone from a big carrier in the room, but sometimes the big carriers just scare the bejesus out of the innovation guys. I can see a hand up in the room.
Yeah, I think a part of that difference that you're talking about, I can hide here behind. I think a part of the difference that you're talking about with fintech to telecoms is that when you refer to telecoms to a non-telecom person, you sound like you're trying to sell something that's super commoditized. And Twilio has done like a really good job of making it seem like that, as opposed to fintech, where that's not totally true. You can have, it depends where you want to go in fintech, I suppose. You can have people like Wealthfront and Betterment, two fintech. There's like 6 of them now, and they all compete directly against it. None of them have actually really won this space, as opposed to when you talk about telecom. I think that most VCs for sure on Sand Hill, would say that Twilio has won the space. And so we might look at that because we have this different view of, the different things that we can do and the shortfalls that Twilio has and things like that. We can look at that and say like, oh, they haven't really won the space. There's all this other stuff going on. When you refer to telecom, though, that's what people are going to say. No matter what you do in telecom, right? If we were to come up, hey, this is what, I do this. The first question that you're always going to get is like, well, can I, does Twilio do that? Can I build that with Twilio? And so, as opposed to fintech, right? So even though you have some really big players there, especially like the hot startups, you've got Stripe, but to Stripe, there's Braintree, and so there are different players that are kind of getting involved. And I think that Stripe is trying to become, do that almost like commoditization where whatever it is in fintech, Stripe is going to help you do it. But that doesn't totally exist yet. And even still, right, Stripe is not going to compete with robo-advisors. And so that's kind of the difference, I think, that you've got there. It almost helps us when we talk about UCaaS, right, because that's different. Twilio doesn't really do that. But the problem is that when you talk to non-technical people about UCaaS, nobody knows what the hell UCaaS means. So, so I think that when you ask about the difference between the two industries, and the things that we see, it looks like what we're doing has been commoditized. No VC wants to touch something that's been commoditized. I think that's the answer.
Look, it is a good point. I have said fintech enough times, so I won't say it again, but I just keep on coming to the fact that, I don't really care if TAD Summit is my dirty little secret. I'm the only Australian that ever turns up. I really don't. It's been awesome over the last 6 years to meet everyone. But I go back and I say, this event was amazing because I got to, learn this and meet this and understand this and go talk to Telstra now about this. And I don't know if the answer is just to try and grow the community. I don't know if the answer is just to try and keep up with TADHacks the way we are and, try and maybe get more carriers involved. If you look at the really big sites, usually like Digi for Malaysia. And to their credit, MTN really got behind Joe Bergen. It was a great event. And Dialogue in Sri Lanka. The largest events we've had have been ones that have been really supported by some big players. The last thing I want to say about Twilio, it's probably the only thing I'll say about Twilio, is they have kind of created a sense of ownership around this space, of leadership in this space. They have spent a ton of cash doing it. And arguably, everything I could get from Twilio today, I could have got from 2 dozen, 3 dozen different folks who haven't spent as much, because I'm in the industry, I know that. They've just tried to bring it into the mainstream. Good on them, right? But I just don't think that the programmable telecoms / TADS community is Twilio. I'd welcome, and I'm sure Alan would welcome them as up here. As we would probably, there's a lot of other folks who I think that we'd welcome up here, right? Because that's the sort of thing that supports the event, supports the education, supports the growth of the community. But anyway, I can see, Greg?
So one more comment from my side. So Thanks, Karel, for your what you said. That so here we are building real relationships, and so from my perspective, so as my business is working with mainly mobile operators and CPaaS players, so I'm not able to talk to 2,000 people at the same time. That's why I'm building strong relationships and trying to help them from different angles, solve existing problem and help to grow business. And maybe this is the answer. Having the size of the community which we have allows us to keep this the relationship with people, not having like thousands of people in the same room, because then we are not able to talk each other. Adding more value to the discussion, again, business, in my opinion, is crucial. I'm happy that Martin is here. He's from business side, and I hope so that next year he will come again and attract to other guys from other NATCOs to come here. It will help us, but the size, maybe it's fine.
So you got that, Alan? We need diversity, and I think gender diversity is a number one we've all got to take up. We also need more people in suits.
I have a question for. I have a question for. How many people were at the first TAD summit?
It was about 110.
110.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember we had Ericsson Huawei, so we had body shops.
Yeah.
Basically, you get them, and then 30 people pop up.
Yeah. Right.
So in terms of, we have far greater diversity now, because most people involved in this one, well, BT, one representative.
Yeah.
It's like Ericsson, we had like sort of 10, Oracle, we had 15. Oh, sorry. So in terms of numbers, is it coming through? Oh, there you go. Yeah, so we were about 80, we peaked at 80. But also remember, we stream online as well, so our reach has improved. So reach has been great. We've been roughly the same now for about 3 years. So it's, and everybody, feedback we get is always great in terms of what we're doing here. It's just, back to, I think, whether it's RelTech, and we should, as a discussion point, we have the blog, we have, sort of a number of tools we can use to just roll this round as a discussion. And I absolutely, I mean, believe me, in terms of diversity, male, female, I spent a lot of time going through a whole range of people, and Jean and a number of people were, sort of helping me, talking, and also Patricia, who she's based here. She's basically the person that helped us get this event location. We went through all the basically groups, and we got to where we got to after a hell of a lot of work. So I understand what you're saying, 50-50. There's no way. No way in hell I can achieve that.
Well, at the first TAD summit, we had 2 tracks, I remember.
Yeah.
So we had more like a business and demo, like solutions track, and then a more tech track.
In fact, this is the first TAD summit we've just had a single stream. Is that correct?
No.
We did it last year as well.
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this was good because you can bring in more people and more community, because at the end of the day, a business guy will always talk more to a business guy, and a tech guy will always speak more to a tech guy. Yeah. Maybe like.
So, having faced the same problem, what we did is we changed the focus of the conference. So, for instance, if you look at the AI machine learning part of the tech world, you actually find a very strong representation of women in that. So that was one thing we did. Second thing we did is we focused on postgraduates in AI and conversational tech, and we said we're going to try and introduce you to companies and show you the real work. And of course, companies are looking for people who have skills, so win-win. And then we try to find companies to sponsor those people to come to the event, so that, because you'd be surprised as a student, the ticket to get there, like the train ticket, even if it's in the same country, it's just not possible for a lot of people. So we got sponsors to do that. then you can broaden the areas by saying, look, like you're looking at telecoms tech, right? There's telecom experiences now. There's UI. There's other parts of it. So you say, look, I want to keep it hardcore and tech, and that's great. But that's why you end up with a room that looks like this. So when you say it's impossible to do, it's impossible to do if you say that this is my definition. Change your definition and you'll get there, right?
We're recording all this, right? Yeah. So surely we can find an engine that's going to do the text, the speech-to-text transcription of everything, so we can make all the notes.
Just going back to that last diversity comment again. I think what we've probably got here is actually probably representative of the industry, and that's the problem. And TADHack is the place where we fix that. And okay, the TADHack demographic isn't perfect either, but it's better than TAD Summit. And perhaps if we're putting our energies into the front end, as Paul said, on the TADHack side, inviting the right people with the right skills and the experienced people there. I'm just thinking back to TADHack London not this year, the year before, where we had people turn up who didn't have any coding experience. They were, social media for a charity, and they wanted to find out what a hackathon was about. And we were able to bring them into a team, and they participated in that. So maybe doing the marketing for TADHack, focusing on those skills where there is more diversity and being more inclusive about that is the way that we kind of fix the whole industry, and then that percolates through to Summit.
And in our defence, I do just want to note that the winners of TADHack Brisbane was an all-female team.
Absolutely. And that is something we get in feedback, that our messaging in terms of TADHack is for everybody. We emphasise the diversity is seen, and just the language we use is seen as very accessible. So I agree, we've been successful there. This has, I understand, just change your definition. It's not that easy. Given what we are, but I understand, there are ways and means. And it is something we are working on, and, we will try different ways to improve that. But we are certainly, there is a definition. I think increasing that diversity, but in ways that maybe help us around the definition, whether it's real tech or, democratized telecoms or whatever we want to use, because I think the T word we've tried, because everybody runs away from it, because telco and telecom are different, and, I've done the weblogs, done the thought leadership, it's just not stuck. We tried, we banged our head against that wall, and it's just not, basically crumbling down. So, we need to use a different definition. So, I think.
And sadly, I think fintech is taken.
Hey, so before, I'm starting to run out of caffeine, and maybe it's time to move to beer. Do we have any final comments from the audience? Anyone else want to say anything at all? Randomly wax lyrical on how much fun they've had this week in Lisbon? Nope. Final comments from the panel, please. Anyone?
See you next year.
Anyone? Rob?
See you next year, but also let's have some great fun at TADHack again next year. That's the front end for me.
Agreed.
Just a comment again on some really smart comments, some really smart insights here. The takeaway from me is I think you can wrap those and just brief analysts from what you've seen, raise concerns, not answers. And I think by that you can become part of the conversation and guide it, as opposed to being the expert, but being someone that is trusted. I think that's a great position here. With that comment from the unified communications and the call center players being built on the Amazon infrastructure, I think you could just do a whole track on what does that mean for the industry. Is this a slow moving takeover you're seeing in action? What should you be worried about? Where's the money be made in the future? I think you have a ton of stuff that you can bring to the conversation around that.
I I think you should accentuate on the no bullshit. It's like Alan's signature, a no bullshit event. That's good. And also maybe by briefing. I mean, I know your philosophy, so for me it's always easy. It's something I don't do elsewhere. Like what I did with Karel, it's like, okay, we explained what we did last year, what went well, what didn't go well. I mean, this is something I know we are filmed, but we don't really get to say or hear in events. And I think this is something the audiences need, because if you go to events, everything is beautiful. Like everybody steps on stage and life was beautiful for 1 year and everything is, and it's not the truth. We all know that. I mean, we all face some good and bad moments, and I think this positioning for TAD is super important, because it's about your personality, and it's about no bullshit. Let's tell the things. Let's ask for help. Let's get advices, and that's good. That's also because of that there is a community.
Greg?
Yeah, the last comment from my side. Definitely it was a great event. I like it a lot and I enjoyed. And take away from my side is maybe also something what I'd like to see here next year. I understood some time ago that from telco perspective, blockchain and AI, there are technologies which will influence heavily telco. And so this is something what maybe should be part of the TAD Summit, and have guys from blockchain, from AI, of course, more like to have a complete block of the discussion about those topics, and then try to allow people to understand how it can influence their business. And this is something what I'd like to see here next year. And of course, I'd like to see you guys here.
Adam?
Yeah, so this is my first time here. Absolutely fabulous. Excellent people, really good, interesting discussions. Obviously, diversity and other things are needed. One thing as a carrier is, we're not the enemy here, right? People tend to look at, this isn't a zero-sum game, right? If we looked at a lot of what the open source and the over the top and thing, it's been trying to take away value from the carriers, right? And we're not very good at giving it up, so that's okay. But it's not a zero-sum game. We can be more by opening up the APIs, doing applications, moving into parallel and other markets. So collectively, we can using the technology we've got and the skills that we have in the industry, we can collectively make more money. Yeah, it's not just a game of chipping away at the fixed and mobile operators, right?
Look, just going back to that comment Alan had in the slides, together we make change. I think that's as an industry, I think that's as a community, and that absolutely involves the carriers, it involves the software developers, it involves the conversational developers. We've got one more from the audience. Because this is a democracy, right?
It is. Thank you. So maybe a few words to cheer everyone up to close this session. Before I got CEO of Wazo, I was an investment banker during 15 years. So I spent a hell of time with VCs and investors. And when you raise the question how to get more attractive when talking about investors or when talking to investors, here I can give you some ideas. When, Alan, you present the market size, $100 billion, I believe that what is at stake is much more than that. If you take another perspective, the market for communication altogether is $1,400 billion. And what the people are doing here is reshuffling totally the cards. We are transforming the way companies interact with their customers, with their team. It's totally different. And what is ahead of us is huge, absolutely huge, Twilio is doing well, and they do not talk about operators and the hard parts, the telecom side. What they put forward is the value for the client, the way they engage with the clients. And then you start understanding that it's not about the money you pay for SIP. You think more the way that you spend maybe less on advertising and more on your communication tools to have direct relationship. So I would invite all of you to reconsider the perspective and take it from the final value proposition. And this is huge. This is why I quit my job as investment banker. I see here a fantastic opportunity to build a crazy company and a unicorn. And I hope there are many baby unicorns here. But we should think that way. So forget about telco, but more conversation is a way to go, or communication. Maybe we should take over the word communication. Engage is it's absolutely interesting, and let's be humble and say that we are the enablers. And VCs, they know that the one who make money when there is a gold rush are the one who sell the shot to dig. Huh? And this is what we are. Okay?
That's a great note to close on. Thank you, Jerome. Look, I just want to, I'm not standing in the way of beer. I want to collectively and severally thank our audience, everyone who participated in the panel session. I want to thank our panel, who are awesome. And also, Alan, I wouldn't fly for 72 hours to spend 48 hours on the ground for anyone else. So thank you, Alan Quayle.
Thank you so much.